Hello students, today I am going to talk to you about the Puranic traditions and the other popular religious cults. Puranic religious tradition was a focal point in the development of religion in India. The compilation of the literary texts called the Puranas focused on the Brahminical social order whose prestige was diminishing in the early years of the Christian era due to the widespread popularity of Buddhism, the beliefs and the practices of Tantrism and similar factors. The Brahmanas in this context made a wholehearted effort to meet the challenge and to win back the people within the folds of Brahminism by cutting off their non-Brahminical connections. As a result, a composite and more unified religious system consisting of various beliefs, practices, and rituals without disparaging the social supremacy of the Brahmanas was created. Evolution of the Puranas was linked with this process, and it emerged from an amalgamation of the Brahminical as well as the local traditions. However, when the first phase of the composition of the Puranas was complete, it already had developed an identity independent of its Vedic tie-ups as well as the local linkages. From the post-Gupta period, large-scale Brahmana migration started, reaching areas so far peripheral to their influence, and such influence carried along a Puranic worldview which now became a part of the Brahminical social order. However, the level of assimilation achieved by these Puranas perhaps were inadequate, and as a result, a new genre of religious texts were written which came to be known as the Upa-Puranas. The Upa-Puranas offered a balance between the Puranic Brahminical tradition and the exclusively regional local tradition. According to Professor Kunal Chakraborty, the largest number of surviving Puranas were written in Bengal between 8th and 13th century CE. In the context of the development of the Puranic tradition, one can also refer to southern India. The Bhakti movement led by the Alvar and the Nayanar saints marked the beginning of a new socio-religious order which reflected the importance of the Puranic Vaishnava and the Shaiva sects, and it also pointed out towards the decline of the heterodox sects like the Jains and the Buddhists. Now, coming to the status of the Puranas and the opinion of the different authors. Brahmanism's divine revelation was closely connected with the Vedas, and the later Vedic literature, due to its close association, also gained a degree of sacredness. In the opinion of Professor Kunal Chakraborty, in spite of the fact that the gods continued to speak through the Brahmanas, the later Vedic literature were too many in number to constitute an authentic collection of scriptures which were acceptable to the devoted followers of Brahminical order. Therefore, while the Brahminical law codes were given the status of remembered truths, the Puranas came to gain a strange status which neither had the doubtless authenticity of Vedic philosophy nor the normative significance of the Sritis. European scholars who worked on the Puranas from the 19th century criticized the Puranic texts in this context, pointing out that in a way these Puranic texts undermined the lofty idealism of Vedic teaching. H. Wilson, while translating the Vishnu Purana, wrote in the preface that the Puranas were sectarian in character and composed by pious frauds for temporary purposes, and hence lacked the authority of Hindu belief as a whole. However, later on, Wilson, while working on a major study of Hindu beliefs and practices, classified the Hindus into three major Puranic sects: the Shaivas, the Vaishnavas, and the Shaktas. have also been deeply studied by the Western scholars. E. W. Hopkins and Wilson, they have both worked on the epics. In fact, Wilson considered the two epics to be the most dependable source regarding the ancient legends of the Hindus after the Vedas. The Puranas, with their conflicting and contradictory representations of name, numbers, and dates, were less acceptable to these scholars. In fact, Hopkins dealt with the Puranas in a very brief and indifferent way. Another author, Monier Williams, has discussed in details the aspects of popular worship like the village deities, the festivals, the pilgrimages, the rites of passage based on Puranas and the Smritis. Here was an acknowledgement of the status of the Puranas. Gradually, the Puranic religion started getting recognition as a valid source of history. F. E. Pargiter treated the Puranas with lots of reverence, although Pargiter's conclusions have been highly debated. Historian R. G. Bhandarkar made the most significant contribution towards the Puranic studies as he forwarded accounts of religious sects based on the Puranic texts. H. C. Rai Chaudhuri also utilized the Puranic texts and treated them at par with the Vedas, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, the epics, the Jatakas, and the Jaina Sutras. By early 1930s, eminent scholars like Haraprasad Shastri and V. R. Ramachandra Dikshit argued that the Puranas consisted of an important segment of Hindu belief. R. C. Hajra's study of the Puranic records in the 1940s depicted the composition of the dates of the Puranas. Hajra also insisted on the character and the textual format that could be found in the different Puranic literature. Now, eventually, the Brahmanas decided to widen their social base and draw non-Brahminical people within the sphere of influence so that they would not challenge the leadership and the authority of Brahminical religious and social order. The result was the creation of a composite and syncretic religious system which consisted of diverse rituals and beliefs without endangering the social supremacy of the Brahmanas. This is how the Puranas evolved out of an interaction of the traditional Brahminical structure and the contemporary local practices. Diverse local customs created a plurality of voices in the Purana literature, and such voices were not exclusively of the Brahmin authors only. Such voices involved not only the language but also the ideology and the power structure of the society. To identify a case study, the Bengala Puranas displayed inner tension, negotiation, collaboration, thus reflecting a kind of a plurality in the entire process. The Bengala Puranas were highly persuasive. In spite of the absence of rational arguments, the commands were issued with a degree of justification. Such justification involved an anecdote describing a mythical character, the incidents in the life of that mythical character. The threat of retribution and the expectations of reward was balanced delicately. In course of the development, the Puranic texts, however, became hyperbolic, repetitive, and in many cases self-contradictory. A particular Purana could be sectarian, but again, the other Puranas would oppose that view. In matters of details, the Puranas differ with each other frequently. A continuous redundancy of mutually exclusive statements is used as a kind of a narrative tool which provides a kind of a space for interpretation to the receiver of the discourse. The collective statement of the Puranas underlined the Brahminical authority. Individual statements became authentic in this context because they carried the authority of the Brahminical thinking process. A normative significance was also attributed to the Puranic texts. In this context, we would come across certain factors on which all the Puranas carried an unanimous opinion. What were these factors? 1. Infallibility of the Vedas. 2. The ritual prerogative of the Brahmanas. 3. The maintenance of the status of Varnashrama Dharma. And finally, the rejection of Buddhism. The Puranas, as it appears, was not written by a single individual with a specific identity, but by idealized collectivity, the Brahmana Varna. Another relevant question which comes up in this context is regarding the origin of the discourse. Obviously, they came from the Brahmanas, who again belonged to a variety of sects and who followed different gods and goddesses according to their personal choices and ranks. Such groups obviously gave a kind of a diversity while they were writing the text. This diversity was identified in the character of the Puranic texts. Thus, the Puranic texts, though loosely organized, were connected by the thread of Brahmanism, its structure being both fixed and flexible. The way the local traditions were absorbed within the Brahminical fold was definitely significant. It led to a process of Sanskritization, which received legitimization from the Brahmanas, and in the early medieval period of Indian history, these syncretic trends gained grounds. Now coming to the Puranic tradition and the popular religious cults. In South India, the basis of religious developments reflected a combination of northern and southern traditions strengthened by the Puranic pattern. Several sources clearly indicate that Vedic and Puranic traditions emerged as an ingrained amalgamation of regional differences and traits. This resulted in the development of popular religious cults around two important deities, Shiva and Vishnu. The growth of Puranic agamic religion in early medieval peninsular India could be traced from the 5th century CE in the Deccan. The Chalukyas of Badami, the Rashtrakutas of Mannakheta, the later Chalukyas of Kollani, the eastern Chalukyas of Vengi, the Kakatiyas of Warangal and the Hoysals of South Karnataka were patrons of two major Puranic religions, Shaivism and Vaishnavism. Some of the regional powers glorified deities like Skanda Kartikeya, Hariti and Shapta Matrika. Tamil region, the Pallavas of Kanchi and the Pandyas of Madurai between 6th and 9th century CE became followers of the Puranic ideology of Shaivism and Vaishnavism. Temples and Brahmadeyas became the institutions through which these religious beliefs were propagated. In course of the development, many tribal and folk deities and many non-Vedic and non-Brahminical goddesses were incorporated within the Brahminical religious order. The Chalukyas of Badami revered Shaptamatrika and worshipped her as a source of sustenance. Lajja Gauri and Yelamma were two pastoral goddesses who received an elevated status during this period. In the Tamil region, Sangam Tinai deities like the Koravai, the Mal and the Murugan received transformed status through Puranic process of merger and became important part of Vaishnava and Shaiva pantheon. Now coming to Vaishnavism and Shaivism in South India. Between c. 700 and 1200 CE, the cult of Vaishnavism became extremely popular and it significantly developed in South India. There was a great upheaval of Vishnu Bhakti. Bhagavata Purana refers to a group of Vishnu devotees known as Alvars. They laid the foundation of Sri Vaishnava school. The Sri Vaishnava movement during the 9th and 11th centuries witnessed harmonious adjustments with the Shaivas in majority of the areas. Shaivism also gave rise to different schools of philosophies and religion in different parts of South India. An important school in the south was the Virashaivas or the Lingayats, the philosophy given shape by Basava, a minister of the Chalukya king of Kollani. The Shaiva Siddhanta school was also found in different parts of India. Refined and developed in Kashmir, it was preserved and altered in Tamil Nadu. Shaiva Siddhanta had at its core text the Puranas and focused on temples. Textual evidences and temple structures indicate that the idea of 10 incarnations of Vishnu was more or less standardized and accepted in early medieval period. Pancharatra texts expanded the idea of the buhas, the emanation of Vishnu, and the number of buhas increased from 4 to 24. Historian Upinder Singh has pointed out that the divine cowherd Krishna emerged as a major focus of the devotional worship within the fold of Vishnuism. The Harivansha, a supplement to the Mahabharata, deals with several legends which are connected with Lord Krishna, his childhood and his youth. The Bhagavat Purana, an important Vaishnava text, probably composed in South India in the 9th and 10th centuries, relates Krishna Charita, the book 10 of the Purana, and provides intricate details regarding Krishna's birth, his childhood, his foster parents, his miraculous exploits like killing of the serpent Kaliya, the love of the gopis, the pang of separation, and so on. However, the name of Radha is not mentioned here. In Matsya, Varaha, and the Linga Purana, there are stray references of the name Radha. The theme of love between Radha and Krishna was elaborated in a later Puranic text, the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. Context of the Shaivites, Upinder Singh refers to the Kapalikas and the Kalamuks. There is no textual evidences regarding these two sects. Their history has to be reconstructed from inscriptions and from the accounts which is forwarded by their critics or adversaries. The Kapalikas were tantric Shaivite priests who carried skull bowls for begging, performed mahabratas, offered animal and human sacrifice, and sometimes practiced self-mutilation. The Kalamuks were the offshoots of the Pashupats active in Karnataka between 11th and 14th centuries. Now coming to the Shakti cult. Around 7th century, Devi Mahatma was inducted in the Markandeya Purana. It contains verses praising the various exploits of the goddess, especially how she punished Mahishasura in the demon. The Narayan Stuti refers to her 9 Matrika forms and other manifestations like Saraswati, Lokhi, Narayani, Kattayani, Bhadrakali, and Durga. In the last 14 verses of Devi Mahatma, the goddess refers to her different manifestations in different ages like Jogomaya, Raktodontika, and so on. She would appear time and again to destroy the evil symbolized by the demons. Architectural and sculptural evidences in different parts of the subcontinent reflect the widespread worship of Durga as well as other Matrika cults and the cults of the Yoginis. Worship of Matrika was popular in the south, especially during the time of the Cholas as well as in the eastern part of India. The inscriptions of early medieval India refers to many other local goddesses. In Orissa, there is Viraja and Stambheshwari, and in Assam, we come across Devi Kamakya. The Puranic tradition built up the concept that the local goddesses were manifestations of one great goddess, the Devi Matrika. The Matsya Purana gives the list of 108 such names of the great goddess, and the Kurma Purana mentions 100 such names. Now, I would talk to you about the Bengala Puranas as interpreted by historian Kunal Chakraborty. The epics uphold the Lokodharma or the religious duties of common people. Such Lokodharma was transformed into Achara in the Bengala Puranas. Achara actually refers to the custom, practice and usage of specific region at a given point of time and which is compatible to one's stage and order of life. The Bengala Puranas uphold the concept that one must perform the duties as prescribed by the Vedas and at the same time demonstrate allegiance to the Puranic high gods, which is inseparable from the preconditions of dharma. Besides, one cannot deviate from the locally practiced customs or the acharas as it is reflected in all holy scriptures that dharma arises from the acharas. This is referred in the Brihat Naradiya Purana. The term achara has been used in a wider perspective when we come across the word gramachara. This means that all varnas should perform the practices and should abide by the conforming the ways of the cities. The Brahma Naradiya Purana also emphasizes on the truth according to their own dharma. Apart from achara, the other frequently used term in the Bengala Purana is Laukika or the popular custom. The Brihat Dharma Purana separated dharma into two parts, the Vaidika and the Laukika. Brahma Vaivarta Purana asserted the fact that when there is a conflict between these two parts, then the popular custom or the Laukika must prevail. Bengal was under the influence of Tantra as well as was a stronghold of Buddhism. Therefore, the Puranic tradition, in order to make impression on the soil, took certain important steps. In Bengal, the Puranas chose a goddess due to her ubiquitous influence among the local people. A regional cult was constructed and later it became one of the major symbols of Bengal's cultural tradition. The goddess of a very popular non-Brahmanical women's brata in Bengal, the Mangala Chandi, was selected. Although not recognized in the high and sophisticated Sanskrit texts written outside Bengal, Mangala Chandi holds quite an important position among the lesser known goddesses of the Bengala Puranas. The Mangala Kabya, a long vernacular poem, was composed in the 16th century Bengal in her honor. According to Shashibhushan Dasgupta, goddess Mangala, referred in Devi Purana, was the precursor of Mangala Chandi. He points out that a verse in Shabdakalpadrum mentions Mangala as one of the 8 yoginis. Mangala and Shankata are worshipped through brothas by Bengali women. The point remains that Brahmanism was willing to accommodate them but not accept them within the Brahminical pantheon at the very beginning. However, at the end of a long process, Mongol Chandi was raised to the rank of one of the approved Brahminical goddess. Now, how this was done? This was done by the strategy of identification of a popular local deity with Chandika, the Mula Prakritishwari, or the goddess of primordial nature. Mongala Chandi gradually came to be described as the primary aspect of Prakriti and is said to be born out of her mouth. She is yet another manifestation of Durga. Passages from Brahma Vaivarta Purana and Devi Bhagavata Purana consider her as a symbol of good fortune, delight, bliss, and auspiciousness, and reiterate the fact that due to such qualities she is called Mongala Chandi and she is worshipped on Tuesdays. She is not only worshipped by women but by men too, who were desirous of their welfare. The identification is so complete that Mongala Chandi has been assigned a Shakti Pitha located on the bank of river Ajoy in the Bardwan district of West Bengal. This place is identified as Ujjaini or Ujjani. In this Mahapitha resides Shankari, who is served by Bhairava. Mongol Chandi thus gained the status of an important Puranic personality. The vernacular Panchalis of Mongol Chandi, which are authentic carriers of her popular story, was ultimately overburdened by the detailed procedures of her ritualistic worship, including Samanna Argho, Bhuta Shuddhi, Pranayama, and even Dhyana. There was even a Gayatri mantra directly taken from Kalika Purana. Thus, Mongol Chandi, a goddess with distinct local character in pre-Puranic Bengal, was raised to a higher status within the fold of Brahminism. The authors of Bengala Purana perhaps deliberately ignored the folk elements connected with Mongol Chandi and relied more on Brahminical overview. Coming to the conclusions, cultural identities evolved and changed over the time. Cult regions developed too. Puranic traditions helped in shaping the religion of India and ultimately enhanced the position of the Brahminical order. It developed through a process of collaboration and negotiation between Vedic formal structure and local and regional elements, opened new avenues of popular cults as Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and Shakta cults, which gained popularity not only among the common men but at the same time received patronage from the regional rulers. In the long run, the rising popularity of Buddhism as well as Jainism could be combated effectively and Brahminical order thus gained ground. Thank you.